welcome to this week's edition of the DC Life, presented by the Fight Shop New Mexico. What a weekend it was. UFC 195. It wasn't everything that everybody from New Mexico wanted, but it was. And it's a weird thing. Carlos Condit lost by decision to Robbie Lawler, but there's so many people saying, including Dana White, saying he won that fight. Carlos won that fight. I'm your host, Sal Mika. I got Michael Franco. And then I also got Damage Control Mouthguard's owner, Delano Romero. Delano, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being a part of it. Micah, what were your thoughts on UFC 195, the headlining fight, Carlos Condit, Robbie Lawler?
Well, first off, it's kind of cool that, 2 days into the new year, I think we already got Fight of the Year.
That
was awesome. That was epic. That was everything I hoped it would be. And quite literally, from what we talked about, it was everything I said it was going to be, with Carlos Condit using his movement, using his kicks, using his range, and putting a volume striking clinic on.
Yeah, I mean, look, Carlos Condit, the significant strikes, 176. According to UFC.com, 176 significant strikes to Robbie Lawler's 92 significant strikes landed. Now, Delano, what was your perspective of UFC 195 main event?
Well, I was watching it at the sports bar, and so of course filled a bunch of New Mexicans, and so it was kind of like watching a fight at somebody's hometown. So everybody was cheering when Carlos Condit did his stuff. So I don't know if I was influenced by that, but I thought he definitely edged that win, and got robbed, as people are saying, by Robbie Lawler.
Now people are questioning the third round. And I don't see very much question. I mean, you're looking at total strikes landed for Robbie, or total strikes overall, according to UFC.com, was 11 of 26 landed. Now, the significant strikes, they were 11 of 26 as well, but Carlos threw 22 of 78, so he was more of the active fighter, and he still outlanded him by half.
And let's also remind everybody that Carlos scored a knockdown in the first round. Robbie scored a knockdown in the second round. The third round, there was no knockdown. And just by those numbers, 73 to 45 throwing, Carlos was the more active party. And when I rewatched the fight this morning, and I actually counted minutes of pressure, 2.5 minutes of the round saw Robbie backing along the cage, and Carlos was pushing the pressure. So when people said the third round was what the judges gave to him, it makes me sick, and I'm totally.
What about the second 2.5 minutes? What went on there?
There was from 1 minute, from the 2 minute and 30 second mark to the there was the third round. We're talking about that. Let me get my minutes right here as I'm looking through my notes. There was from the 3 minute mark to where the 3 minute 45 mark to the 3:15 mark, that big flurry when Robbie threw all of his punches back Carlos to the cage. Had Carlos moving, and as we all remember, Carlos jumped in with a big knee that caught Robbie on the chin. He circled away. Robbie pressured again. That gets us to the 2.5 minute mark. From that moment to the last 30 seconds of the round, Robbie didn't do anything besides landing the elbow that Carlos ran into and one low kick. Other than that, the last 2 minutes, Carlos was pressuring, Carlos was going forward, and that was when it was in his favor. The first 2 minutes of the round was when it was really the most even part of the round. They were both in the center, they were both circling and moving. It was from about the 3 minute and 45 second mark to the end of the round was where all the action happened, and Robbie was only active for 30 seconds of that round with that flurry. Other than that, I had Carlos active, pressuring, and going forward the entire round. I watched this round 6 times this morning to take all of my notes to go through this. I don't see a disparity at all.
Interesting.
Now, the 5th round, people are calling that the round already of the year, that was a great round. What was your thoughts on that round, Delano? What do you remember from that round?
Man, I just remember, I didn't, again, I watched it with a lot of people at a sports bar, but I just remember being really scared for Carlos at the end of the round where Robbie Lawler, or not the end of the round, but the majority of the round, where Robbie Lawler just went out there just throwing bombs and landing all of them, which, goes to show, the iron jaw of Carlos Condit, because I don't think anybody else could have taken those shots the way he did, and still try to figure out how to throw punches back while all that was going on.
When I re-broke down that round, the first 3 minutes of the round, Robbie Lawler did not really throw strikes. He was pressuring. He was coming forward. But what I saw was Carlos Condit with his teep kick and with his quick combination circling and moving out of the way. Did Lawler hit him hard? Did he back him up? Did he have him on the run? Yes, he did. But that lasted from the minute and 30 mark to the 30-second mark of the last round. If you really look at the first 3 minutes of that final round, it was all Carlos again.
Was it really? Wow.
It was. I went back to look at the rounds, not that Carlos won, but that Robbie won, to really dissect them. And in the second round, I contend that really Robbie won that round with one punch. So my assessment of his performance in all is that Robbie Lawler retained the title doing less than any other champion ever has. One punch in the second round, one flurry of 30 seconds in the third round, and 1 minute-long flurry in the fifth round won him and retained him the title. Carlos Condit consistently worked for 25 minutes.
That sucks.
Now, Delano,
yeah,
you,
I definitely think you got robbed.
Oh, yeah. And you actually make Carlos Condit's signature mouthpiece. I mean, I call it Carlos Condit Zia mouthpiece, because this guy represents New Mexico Johnny Tapia-like. The way there's other fighters from here, but the way he represents New Mexico inside that UFC cage is unlike anyone else that does it here in current day. And so he went into your shop, the damage control offices, to pick up his custom mouthpiece by you guys. What was his thoughts leading into it? What was his feel like before the fight?
So I would like to get credit for all those hard shots that he took from Robbie Lawler.
Saved him.
But I can't, because in reality, mouth guards do not prevent concussions, as other companies claim. There's lack of evidence for that. So, so he came in, and unfortunately, I wasn't there. I was in Canada on a family vacation for the holidays, but my employees, who are huge fight fans, Vic in particular, talked to him and asked him a few things, and Carlos was pretty confident. He said, I don't see this going past the second round. And he was confident that he was going to finish Lawler within the second round. That's what he saw going. What's that?
Go ahead.
Oh, so I was expecting that too, to be honest.
You know what I really like right now and really think is funny? People talk about, Lawler landed the harder shots. The harder shots. Is this not the same guy that got knocked out from a jab?
Yeah.
Right,
who's that? Who got knocked out?
Knocked out back in Strikeforce. Nick Diaz with a jab knocked out Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
So that just right there goes to prove that power isn't everything, and precision does count and does matter for everyone that's saying that the power shots count. Another thing I found was funny was people were talking about that you can't count just all the statistics and the stats that Carlos piled up because this isn't boxing. Well, on the counter side, all they were counting was the boxing, Robbie Lawler's boxing. So it's an argument that defies itself.
Yeah, I mean it's a battle between who you felt won. I mean it's crazy how everybody wants to be a judge on a Monday morning quarterback. What do you think about his talk about him wanting to retire? Carlos Condit, that is.
Oh yeah, I'd like to talk about that. I personally think it's a negotiation ploy. for him to get bigger money, because it just doesn't make sense. This he's being offered another shot at a title. Who gets that after losing? And he's like, I think I'm going to retire. So I think he's pulling a Nick Diaz in that sense, where Nick Diaz is always saying that, I'm sick of this sport. And it worked for Nick Diaz to get what he wanted. So I think Carlos Condit's playing the same card.
That's a good perspective on it, and I didn't think of that at all, really. I mean, you should think about that, business-wise. But what I find funny is there's rumblings around New Mexico and Albuquerque specifically, and rumors saying that, he basically demanded this title shot, that he threw out that retirement talk to get this title shot. Now, I'm not going to say who told me this or who but that's what I was hearing, is the way he leapfrogged everybody he was practically saying, hey, look, I think I'm going to retire. The UFC, they need fresh, newer, and he's new because of his knee injury coming back, new storylines to lead into the UFC fights, championship fights, and so that's why he leapfrogged a few people that they, because there was rumblings that he wasn't deserving of this title shot. Any of those kind of talk is ridiculous. This guy earned the title, hands down. Was a good title run, and he should hold his head up high. But that's interesting. I don't know what to take from it. I don't know if it's the beatings. I don't know if it's the surgery on his knee.
Did you notice a post press conference? He was wincing a lot, moving around on a chair.
Yeah.
I was curious what was going on in his body at that point.
Well, I'm a firm believer that this sport, when you fight at that high of level and you give that,
oh my gosh, I know,
of hurt and pain and just that gusto, I really believe it takes a piece of your soul out of your body. And he's a family man now. Like I was going to say, he's
sure.
his son. He's all about his kid and his wife, and that starts changing people, and so that might be it as well. I don't know, Micah.
Some people play baseball. Some people play basketball. Carlos Condit has been in a martial arts gym since 15 years old. He's 31.
Yeah.
That's 16 years of a competitive beating. We don't know about the wear and tear. We don't know about his other priorities, other goals. People have been talking about that recently. I don't know what they are. I don't want to see him retire. He's 31 years old. It still seems kind of young, kind of rushed, but it's all really up to him. But you got to expect right now, if the UFC rewatches this fight, like I keep saying, it makes me sicker and sicker each time I watch it, a rematch will happen. And we're talking about him getting jumping over everybody. He did it because he's exciting. Because the fight with Thiago Alves was exciting. And because when the UFC looked at the other possible matchups, Robbie Lawler and Tyron Woodley are scared to death to stand there in the middle of the ring. They will be tackling legs. So we're going to postpone that because they don't want to stand there with Carlos or Robbie. This fight was the most exciting and the best moneymaker they could put out there. And that's what they're doing with their go big. You couldn't go big with two guys that were just going to wrestle.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick before I let you go, I say based on those type of fights that you can have where it really breaks you and leaves a piece of you inside the cage, I say whoever gets the next title shot against Robbie Lawler wins that title, because I think it all started with him and Rory McDonald, and this fight, it's wearing on him. It truly is wearing on him.
On Robbie?
It's starting to break down his body. I really believe whoever gets this next title shot beats him.
I think Johnny Robbie 1 started wearing on Robbie, because it's now 5 consecutive 5-round fights that have went the distance. Even that Matt Brown fight was a war. Yeah. He's been putting on great fights. How much longer does Robbie Lawler have in him at 33 years old, doing this since he was 18? That's 15 years at the highest elite levels.
Yeah, I don't see him doing it. Delano, last words before we let you go.
This is a great fight. I remember in boxing when there was great wars like this, the commentators would often say that the fighters are never the same after their particular wars, and maybe the case in this fight.
Yeah, I have to agree. Delano Romero, Damage Control Mouth Guards. Give us your website real quick before we let you go.
My website is dcmouthguards.com. And if you want to follow us on Twitter or Instagram, we appreciate it. The handle is at DC Mouthguards.
Awesome. Thank you, Delano, for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. You guys keep up the good work.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Damage Control Mouthguards. He's the one that creates a majority of the mouthpieces you see inside the UFC cage. Isn't it kind of funny? We have the DC Life podcast. We have these great teams here. It really, truly is for training and just the fight game in general. We may not have a professional sports team in New Mexico, but we sure have professional fighters and businesses within the fight community.
If you want to be huge in fighting, whether it's boxing or MMA, I believe there's 3 places you can be: LA, Las Vegas, or Albuquerque. And it's weird to throw us in a category like that, but with Jackson's, with Fit, with what we've done with Danny Romero, what used to be Team Tapia, even to guys like Austin Trout, people in the South, it is an epicenter, really, for combat sports out here. Just wish, actually, though, we could get some more Muay Thai and kickboxing going in this area.
I think that's going to come. I think that's going to come in 2016. I think you're going to see more of it. We're going to take a little quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk more UFC 195. Don't touch that dial. And we're live from the Fight Shop, New Mexico. We go air on CageMinds.com.
The Fight Shop, New Mexico, in the Montano Plaza Shopping Center, located off Coors and Montano.
All right, we're back. The DC Life Uncensored. I'm your host, Sal Mika Frankel. We just talked UFC 195 main event. Robbie Lawler, Carlos Condit. What a war it happened. Is there going to be a fight that touches this? I don't think so. And I know we're only 2 days into the new year at this point, or at that point that it happened. But I don't see any fight leading up this kind of war unless part 2 happens. Part 2 may not even be as good as part 1.
Yeah, you never know, but I had high expectations for this one. It lived up to it. And the card, in itself, a theme of the night is a lot of people were all complaining, the judging. Those judges sucked ass. And I got to make the point that it amazes me that they suck so hard because this was Las Vegas, and not more than 4 weeks ago in December, we had 3 events in 3 days and not this many controversial decisions.
Yeah.
And then the same city can F up and make everyone so outraged online, out there in social media, talk about the whole card. We started off on the Fight Pass prelims with Sheldon Westcott, who spent a lot of his time for his camp out here against Edgar Garcia. He threw Edgar Garcia down and just beat him up to start off the fight. Got the first round TKO. So the night started off well for the Jackson Winkle-John camp. You had Michinori, Tanaka, Joe Soto. Tanaka put Soto on his back a couple times, wrestling, and won rounds with that. But Soto was threatening off his back, had Tanaka stuck in a go-go plata, had Joe Rogan seizuring out with an orgasm because he thought, it was going to be pulled off. Hadn't seen one since Diaz pulled it off in Pride. And somehow the judges do not respect what you do off your back. The guy laying on top takes the decision. Controversial. First problem of the night. Tanaka got beat up, punched a lot. He won the second round, but was being beat up in the third and was being threatened with submissions the entire first round. Bad decision there. The fight that if you did not see it, you totally missed out. Dustin Poirier, Joseph Duffy. It's hard to believe this, ladies and gentlemen, but I would call this fight of the year for about 2 hours. About 2-3 hours. This was fight of the year. 2 days into it, you were already like, I can't believe what I just got to see. Boxing, head movement, a broken, shattered nose from Dustin Poirier. Not totally red mask like Rory McDonald, but halfway there. Then did what a mixed martial artist does, relied on his grappling, took the fight to the ground, and had Duffy eating elbows. One judge even gave the second round a flurry of elbows. Poirier 10-8. Poirier 30-27. His grappling, domination, and the UFC takes a big shot there because they really wanted Duffy to be everything that McGregor is too. And his takedown defense was not up to par. He wasn't able to get up off his back. He did threaten and did have a deep armbar / triangle working as the final bell rang. But Poirier now 3-0 at lightweight. Top 10 now, looking like a contender. Moving up weight classes, you got to love when that happens for a guy and they succeed because I hate seeing depleted skeletons on the scale. We move forward onto the Fox Sports 1 card, and this fight was just mind-blowing to a lot of us. Drew Dober takes a unanimous decision from Scott Holtzman. Dober is a Muay Thai specialist, and Holtzman is known more for his ground and pound. Dober won the fight by putting Holtzman on his back with his wrestling. Completely mind-blowing. Big win, though, for Dober after getting submitted by Efren Escudero. And then the bad decisions come again. Justine Kish, Nina Arfsnoth. 2 judges gave all 3 rounds to Justine Kish, who ate about 20 strikes in the first minute of the first round, was wobbly everywhere, and somehow still wins that round. 2 controversial rounds with grappling. Kish got a takedown late in the second, was getting her face beat up. She ends up on top for the last minute and 30 seconds, working for an Americana, a key lock, and not throwing any strikes. She had some positional control and never even got to a point where it was a full-blown submission where she was yanking or attempting. So a very odd way for her to win that round. And in the third round, Nina got a takedown 30 seconds in, stayed on top for 2 minutes. Kish gets on top for a minute, landed a significant amount of, I'd say about 10 more strikes. They give her that round. It was a rough, controversial decision just because 2 judges saw it so dominantly, and it was anything but. And then you get to the main event, or not main event, this was another one on those prelims. It was Alex Morano on a short notice taking on Kyle Noak. The first round, there was a significant striking advantage for Noak, even though he got caught with one big right hand. Didn't really get dropped, didn't really get wobbled from it. It did break his nose. Noak did have takedown and more control time throughout this fight. Morano had one really deep armbar attempt late in the third round, got out of it. They go to the judge's decision. The wide mouth, huge open eyes, and the oh my gosh look on Morano's face is all I needed to tell me that I wasn't crazy. He thought he lost that fight too. Another bad decision. Now we closed off those prelims with Michael McDonald coming back against Masahari Kanehari, and Kanehari put McDonald on his back for the first round, was really stifling McDonald. And then we really don't talk about submissions of the year because you can't see, submissions, we see them all the time. But from coming out the back door on an arm triangle, taking the back and getting the rear naked choke in, it was amazing for McDonald, who's known as the striker. So great win for him coming back after 2 years of injuries. Go up to the main event card. Abel Trujillo was getting May look like a fool on the feet. He could not keep up with nor catch Tony Sims. Sims was light years ahead of him, picking him apart. Sims trying to change up the game, goes for a takedown and gets trapped in a guillotine, and Trujillo choked the life out of him. That is a big, strong dude. I don't want those arms around my neck. Another great matchup. You had Brian Ortega and Diego Brandao. Diego came out, had a good first round, was really being explosive, putting his strikes together. The longer the fight wore on, though, his explosion went down. The length of Ortega came into play. And in the third round, they got in clinch range. Ortega went for a guillotine choke, ended up almost getting the Doris, I believe, rotating to the mount, and then finishing off the guillotine, finishing off the fight with a triangle choke, pulling himself to guard. T-City for a reason. The guy is amazing at transitioning from submissions. Loving his improvement. 10-0, former RFA champion. Great win for him.
Another, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but another young talent coming up into the game. And I want to touch on how quickly these guys are getting released from the UFC and how many new guys are coming up after you're done breaking down. But it was a good fight. Diego Brandao was winning this fight the whole time.
He
in
was
my
winning
opinion.
it. He looked good. He was getting hit a little bit more in the second round, but he was still not going as crazy as we know Diego to go. He was staying controlled, and he was putting combinations together.
And the transition and the smoothness of his grappling submission game, that's telling a lot because he submitted 100% a legitimate black belt.
Yeah, Diego looked good on the ground and even had stifled the earlier exchanges that they had, but too long after the long limbs, Ortega got it. And another fight, this fight, a lot of people were underselling this one on the main card, but Albert Tamenov and Lorenz Larkin, that was just fun watching.
I thought Lorenz was going to actually take care of him. He's a former Strikeforce guy, been around for a little bit. I really did surprised by the way this one ended up.
I honestly had Tamenov winning this. I thought he would win a decision, and I thought his boxing would be too much, and I thought his pressure, because we've seen Larkin, he likes his range, he likes his movement. He does come with those big, awkward styles, but he likes his range, and I thought Tamenov was just going to suffocate him. A lot of people thought this was a controversial decision. I didn't. I felt that Tamenov put enough combinations together with his hands to equal out the absorbing leg kicks, and I thought he was the more pressuring of the two fighters in a really close fight. I thought that was a good decision. Neither guy needs to have their head down from that one. And move of the night, though, would be the spinning low heel kick from Lorenz Larkin. So flashy, so cool looking, but didn't get the job done. I thought that was a great one on the split decision there. And Miocic blasted Arlovsky. We both had Miocic winning, but Sal had him taking out Arlovsky. Number one contender, without a doubt.
Yo, absolutely. I mean, I thought, and trust me, I'm the biggest AA fan you can find. It's just, you watch all his wins, and in every single fight, he just got lucky enough to recover faster and catch his guys, or with the exception of Frank Mir, where they looked like they were just sparring, having a sparring session, and whoever won, a big whoop-de-doo. To me, that's the way that fight looked like. But I didn't think he was going to be able to outlast him. I thought he would get blasted, and lights went out.
I thought too much pressure, too much athleticism. Miocic and Velasquez at the top of their games. I want to see that. That would be fun. For Doom, though, is all of a sudden Velasquez anyway with his pressure and his striking ability. So I can't wait for next month's title fight and then the next heavyweight title fight. They both seem like they're going to be good ones.
Well, that title fight, Verdum and Velasquez are going to be fighting February 6th.
February 6th.
The Fight Shop New Mexico will be at Library Bar and Grill on San Mateo. Not the downtown one, the San Mateo Bar and Grill. Super nice. You can hear everything the commentators are saying. There's TVs everywhere, drinks. The chicas are beautiful there. The ones that do the waitressing and whatnot. It's a fantastic atmosphere. It's a much needed facelift for the Fight Shop New Mexico. So Library Bar and Grill on San Mateo, not the downtown one. The San Mateo is where we're going to.
And I got to touch on the main event.
196.
UFC 196 be a Library Bar and Grill. Got to touch one more time on the main event. The funniest thing is you look at the corners, even in between the rounds. No one knew Robbie Lawler won round 3 until the judges told us. 2 people told us all of a sudden, and nobody else really knew it until then.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. It's going to come back up. It's interesting to hear the perspective of maybe he is throwing it business out there, saying, "Hey, look, I'm going to retire, and work it, angle it to get more money," or is he really saying, "Hey, enough's enough"?
The entire panel for the Fox Sports show with Karen Bryant, Kenny Florian, Daniel Cormier, Tyrone Woodley, Dana White, both us, every major media outlet out there, all had the fight 48-47, Condit, and I can make an argument for it's 50-45.
Yeah, I mean, and you said the same thing, and the truth is, whether it was 3-2, 4-1, 5-0, it was still Carlos who won the fight.
And it was still a robbery by 2 judges.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think is the most important thing to happen in judging? Should we go down the road Road FC has announced, where It's an unlimited point system. In the system, points will be awarded for specific action and activity. 1 point will be given for clear strike, takedown, near submission, full mount, or back mount position, clear control on the ground, and aggression. 5 points will be awarded for a knockdown. All points will be accumulated through the entire fight, not round by round. And so, therefore, a performance throughout the entire bout will determine the clear winner. In that kind of format, it sounds like Carlos Condit wins the fight.
In that format, he does win the fight. He would have accumulated more points. The other thing I like about their system is that it takes that almighty last-second takedown out of winning the round. The takedown is what it should be. 1 point. It counts as much as a jab, as much as a leg kick. We've seen
as much as a significant strike.
You've seen more leg kicks and more one punches knock people out than you have slams.
Yeah.
We treat a takedown like it's the most pivotal thing ever when it really is just one element of what's happening.
So do you think these athletic commissions in the United States and I guess Brazil and whoever follows, England, whoever does theirs and whatnot, but more importantly, the United States athletic commissions, will they look to Road FC's unlimited point system and maybe even make a change for it with this outcry? Or what is it going to take for athletic commissions to implement different rules for boxing and MMA? Because this 10-point system is not working. We both know that. Heck, Joe Rogan even stated it on his own Twitter that it's not working. It's not boxing. These are two totally different sports. We have MMA athletes saying these are two totally different sports, two totally different styles, two different angles and cuts and everything else. You use the strikes to set up for your takedowns. You use the strikes to deter from takedowns. With boxing, you're using the jab to set up the right hand, to cut the angle. Totally different sport. So why not change the rule set?
Well, something has to give and something has to change. There's only a couple things that I look at it already, and it's questioning. They talk about clear strikes. Well, think about this. A guy throws a kick to the head. It's blocked by the arm. We haven't seen that break an arm before. Do they count that as a clearly landed strike? Because you're saying, well, in intention, you meant to hit it in the head, but it hit the arm. There was a point even during the main event with Lawler and Condit where Condit threw a kick, and it was to the body. Lawler's arm was around. It directly kicked the arm. Do you count that as a significant strike? Because to me, he landed where he meant to. But to a lot of us watching a fight, you don't count something that hits the arm as even counting. You consider that as blocked. What does that count?
Well, look, that wears down your arms too.
Exactly. It should count.
I know people don't see it like that, but when you punch somebody to the arms, whether it be the shoulder, the elbow, the bicep area, you're wearing down their anatomy. You're wearing down their ability to output and outstrike you, and not as strong strikes are going to come back to you. So when somebody does hit to the arms, to the body, you're wearing down that piece of body. You're slowing them down. You're slowing their striking down. You're slowing their kicks down. Body shots, I think, are more instrumental than headshots, in my opinion.
They all count. I think they actually weigh about the same, that they don't get enough. And here's one of those other things you would think. In this kind of scoring, then you have someone saying, well, if I land a right hook and it's powerful, like a Robbie Lawler powerful, my opponent takes a step back, but he's not hurt, he's not necked down. That counts, but it's 1 point as to where a dude jackhammering right hands to the rib cage in half guard is counting 1.5 times, and you're stacking up. So I could see holes into arguments of why it could be good and it could be bad. Could you see that?
I could. I definitely
Because you're counting a rabbit punch as much, in the clinch, you're thinking about little rabbit punches.
Sure.
A Chow Sutton, he was my favorite at doing this. He'd be like palm slapping a dude in the ribs, and you're literally thinking, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's got 20 strikes. All of a sudden, the dude's like, what's happening here? I'm not being hurt.
Yeah.
And I've seen open palm strikes like that, and if skin's hitting skin, it's kind of like tag. You're like, okay, it has to be counted as a strike. So then you're getting into significant strikes and intentions. And again, I'm going back to UFC 195. Someone told me, oh, you can't count them as the same because Robbie Lawler is a sledgehammer and Carlos Condit is hitting like someone that's hitting with a wiffle ball bat. I'd rather be hit by a wiffle ball bat 1,000 times than one time by a sledgehammer. But you can't say every one of those strikes was a wiffle ball. He was changing up speeds, changing up momentum. He was landing a lot. Depends where you hit. So something has to change, and something needs to change, and it would almost benefit the sport to slow down the growth to have a think tank, to come together with something, to be allowed to grow. And as we're calling out, the commissions to get better, I'd like to see the UFC in particular do something, because they're so big and so much the forefront and the leader of everything. They air statistics on their pay-per-views, on the telecasts.
Yeah.
Well, the judges don't get to see those stats. They don't know control time. They don't know center time. They don't know the striking. So it builds my arguments even better. They don't know what they're watching because they're trying to count this off the moment. And also, now we're talking about that scoring system. They have to be scoring, counting all these things, while trying to pay attention. And I don't know if they know how to do that. And then tabulating in between rounds, the score and the points is going to take forever. You would need 3 judges per each judge, I think, just to be able to tabulate, count, and watch the fight all at once. So that could bring up some potential problems. That could be one thing. But also, getting back to where I think the UFC, ONE FC had a fighter pass away from weight cutting. 2 months later, they have changed their weight system. The UFC could give judges screens. They could implement different standards for judging their events to help their commissions. They have the money. They have the power. If ONE FC can uproot their entire weight class and change it, and their weight cutting rules, the UFC could help out judging, specifically just even for their events, because some of the things I would think that would help technologically are not available for some of our smaller shows. But we're talking about at the upper echelon, at the NFL level of MMA, that things need to be at the highest caliber.
Yeah, I agree with that, and you're starting to see the with the whole IV ban and whatnot here with the athletic commissions in the United States. You're seeing these guys' body change. You're starting to see them trying to decide where they're going to go from there. Real quick, let's touch on February 21st.
February 21st.
Well,
why is it in Pittsburgh?
Well,
why
quick,
is it in Pittsburgh?
Hold on. We're going to take a quick break.
Break time.
Yeah, real quick. And then we're going to touch on, we're real fast. We're going to come back. We're going to touch on it, and then we got to get out of here. We're going to touch on February 21st. It's an exciting date. It's a meaningful date here in New Mexico. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
The Fight Shop New Mexico in the Montano Plaza Shopping Center, located off Coors and Montano.
All right, we're back. This is DC Life Uncensored. We talked UFC 195 main event in the first segment with Delano Romero of Damage Control Mouthguards. Micah Franco of CageMinds.com broke down UFC 195, the results, and gave more of his opinion. And now, like I said, February 21st is significant here in New Mexico. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, for one thing, the UFC announced after UFC 195 weigh-ins that a fight between Jackson Wink's Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Fit NHB's Tim Dirty Bird Means at 170 UFC Fight Night 182. What were your initial thoughts, Micah?
Oh my gosh. Why is this in Pittsburgh?
I'm glad it's not here.
That my initial thought was, why is it's not here? And then as I started thinking about it, somebody said you could just imagine the fights in the crowd, and then I was like, probably a better idea it's not here. Okay, I renege it. I'd like to be there. This would be great to see. I'd like to think this is going to be a barn burner, but I really don't think it's going to be. I think this is going to be the coming out party and the more recognition for Tim Means. I think that Donald Cerrone, it is the right move to be moving up to 170.
Why?
Because the weight cut, because his body, because he cuts too much weight, because the way he likes to party. Something takes a toll on his body that he can't take a body shot. Pettis and Dos Anjos hurt him really quickly both really badly to the body. I think it's a good move for him.
A fresh move. Does he move consistently at 170 now?
We could see. Maybe this is a one-time thing just because he wants to fight. Maybe this is a complete movement. I'd like to see him move up there. He did lose now twice to Dos Anjos. Yeah. So that puts you away from the champion. He has lost to Pettis. He is a name, though, that it is the deepest division. He's moving into another huge division. But with us talking about the weight cutting, with everything, I think it's better anytime anybody moves up. They seem to be stronger. They seem to be able to take more. It's not healthy to be a skeleton. I was reading something a couple weeks ago from a doctor that said, you're a fool if you're thinking you could suck every electrolyte, every ounce of water out of you, hop on a scale, and be rehydrated 24 hours later. You'll be lucky if you're rehydrated 72 hours later. It is not healthy what the fighters are doing to their bodies. I think we'll see better fights, better gas tanks if guys are cutting less weight. This is something I've been harping on for a long time. So I love this move. I love this move for Cerrone as much as I loved it when Tim did it and when Benson Henderson did it.
Sure. It's going to be an interesting fight. I think it's a good move for him. I think it's the wrong fight.
Exactly.
In my opinion, I think this fight is Tim's to lose.
Tim, I believe right now, is too big of a welterweight, too strong of a welterweight, and his boxing and his pressure are really going to shine through.
Yeah. The only reason why I say it's Tim's to lose, and let me explain that, is if the politics of New Mexico mixed martial arts and the backstory of the Jacksons, Winks, and
could he get too emotional?
Not him, but the corners, in the sense of maybe the Fit NHB team, because they run on heart. They really do. It's not knocking them. That's what they do. You know, it's whatever they take. It's their mentality of their gym and their style. And if they put that kind of pressure on him, where they're saying, oh, you need to beat this guy. If they do, I'm not saying they're going to, but if they do put that added pressure and not let Tim just go in there and fight, it could end up backfiring on them. And that's the only way I see Cowboy winning. Honest to God, that's the only way I see Cowboy winning this fight.
Now, would it be strange for me to tell you, though, I expect this to go at least 4 minutes, pretty deep into the first round, even if Tim could get a knockout, because I believe we're going to see a better Cerrone, because he's better when he's more active sometimes, and who knows how much that layoff and the rust hurt him, because that's who he is.
I think you're going to make it to the second round.
Second round?
Both guys, kind of will fill each other out the first round. They're going to land. They're going to hit. But I think it's going to finish in the second. I think Timmy finishes them in the second. Again, emotion plays a big part. The mental and the emotional side of this. If they push him into that. And a good corner won't. I'm not saying they're going to. But if they did, being that Timmy's their top dog, that's the leader. He stated on the DC Life, I am the leader of the Wild Bunch. And if anybody wants to come see me about it, they can.
Now, how much are we blowing this over proportional, Fit versus Jacksons? We're down here, we're in it. But also we're down here, we're in it. And we know that Cerrone, let's be honest, 80% of his camp was his camp.
Sure.
The BM Ranch. For him, I'd say he's less Jacksons and more himself.
You could put that in there. If I was the UFC...
They're hyping this to sell.
I would figure out... I'm sure the story has been told. I'm sure the story has been told to the UFC or parts of it. But let me tell you, if you get embedded down here, starting maybe next week, and do embeddeds of the story, and let Tom tell his side, let Greg tell their side, let Wink tell his side, let Arlene tell her side, let John Judy tell his side, let Chris Luttrell even, because he was there at the beginning, let him tell his side, and let it grow from there, embedded all the way to the fight. This is one of the best fights.
We're 6 weeks away, right?
Yeah.
Is this not enough time to hype up this fight as big as it should be?
It absolutely should be. And that's where I think Embedded can really push over the edge and tell the story of these two teams. And then when and if the UFC does come back to New Mexico, they have this storyline. Now there is another team in New Mexico. There is, and it raises the stock of both teams. It's a rivalry. It's just like the Black Zillions and ATT.
No. It's not. This is a little
Well,
deeper.
this is
and then
deeper.
I think it gets
This
a
is
little
deeper.
crazier when you realize the new gym is 2 blocks away from Fitt's gym.
And that's where the lead off can go and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that they really wanted to have that team versus team and the hate and the rivalry.
It's the same reason we think they could
That's
do another tough down here and probably break it between Fitt and Jackson's.
Could possibly.
Could.
Could possibly. But this is a good way to get more people not only knowing just about the Fit NHB team, but the story behind these guys before the lights and cameras of the UFC hit, right at the cusp of when it was breaking off, and the two camps split. That's something you guys got to research. I'm not going to be the person to tell you about it from my perspective because I don't know.
Well, let me put you on the hot seat, actually. I do have a question from this weekend because there's been a lot of people that told me, I don't know this personally, but I heard throughout the main event, they said at 15 years old with Holly Holm, Carlos Condit started with Mike Winklejohn. I've heard differently.
False. That's false. He started with Jackson's West, which was run by black belt Tom Vaughn.
Okay.
Jackson's West was on Manal, I believe it was on Manal and 12th Street. Keith Jardine trained there, Carlos, Thomas Schulte. When all this split happened and it became Fit, Carlos went with Fit. Thomas Schulte went with Fit. Keith was training with I believe, Mike at the time, and that's where it changed. They're telling a different story, and I don't like that. I don't like that part of it. You know, you're forgetting the true lineage.
Right.
That's the truth.
No doubt Carlos
That's
has
the
been
truth.
fighting since 15, but
No,
that's what I heard. He was Fit. He was
Fit.
Jackson's
He was
West.
with
He wasn't
Jack-
with Jackson and Wink directly.
No. And it wasn't Jackson Winks at the time. It was Jackson Ground Fighting, but it was Jackson's West. Jack Gregg had the school on the east side.
East side.
And then Fit was running this one, or Tom Vaughn was. I didn't even know if Arlene was there at this point. I don't know, but I assume she was.
But we know Tom was
But
still
Tom was the main
manager,
focus,
the runner,
guy that runs it, the main dude there. One of the original black belts between Brad, Chris, Brad. Or I forget how to say his last name. He's one of the black belts. It's Chris Luttrell, Tom Vaughn, Greg Jackson. The least significant of them, and they may get mad at me for saying this, in terms of fighting, was Greg Jackson. All the other guys, legitimate fighters. High school wrestler. That's all Greg was. Now, did he actually train in judo and some jiu-jitsu? Yes, with Alberto Crane, with Professor Jesse Ballou at Sandia Judo Club. It's fact. I was there as a younger kid doing judo on my off-season of wrestling. He was there, so was Alberto Crane. If you ask Alberto, he's in California, he'll tell you the truth. That's the honest truth. They used to train there. They used to, crazy Steve with his sticks was swinging his sticks in Sandia Judo Club, same thing. And teaching his knife fighting, and they would do all that stuff there as well. So that's kind of where I don't like that the UFC doesn't tell the full story, but this is where they can make right in the embedded series and show the backstory. I think that would make this fight even bigger. That's just my opinion. Again, it is Tim's to lose, in my opinion. I think he's bigger, stronger, faster, and hits a whole heck of a lot harder. I don't see where Cowboy can win this fight. When you got a guy who's over 200 and some pounds walking in there, and a guy that's barely making the 170 weight cut, maybe 180, it's too big, too strong, too fast, hits way hard, you know. And it's just, I think if the 155ers are putting him down, I think Timmy's going to put it on him a little bit harder.
Yeah, definitely. And I got to say, you think it's going to make the first round? I kind of see it, or the second round. You said second round. I'm kind of thinking first round just because Cerrone is a slow starter and Timmy is not. Timmy establishes his range, pumps his jab, and starts sliding forward, looking for the big power shot right afterwards, planting that teep kick into the body. He comes aggressively out the gate, and Cerrone is a slow starter. He starts slow, he's going to get finished quick.
What'd you say, 6 weeks until it happens?
6 weeks.
We're going to be talking about it for 6 weeks. That's all the time we have for this week's edition of the DC Life Uncensored We record live every Monday inside the Fight Shop New Mexico on Coors and Montano. It airs via cageminds.com. Micah, you're going to interrupt me again for the millionth time. Go ahead and say one more thing.
Keep checking out cageminds.com. We got a bunch of great stories up there. There's tons of local action coming soon.
Happy New Year. Check it out. There's a lot of boxing, a lot of mixed martial arts coming our way, not only locally but nationally with the local flavor behind it.